Paul's first book, The New Influencers, was written back in the Stone Age of online communications, 2007, long time ago. Tell me, bring us back there for a moment. What were the experts saying at that time about which direction we were taking?
Well, I think at the time, 2007, that book was mainly about blogging, and blogging was pretty much all we had in 2007. I mean, Facebook was practically unknown, MySpace was popular with kids, but the whole social networking phenomenon, I don't think anyone predicted that would happen at that point. So what blogs were was an evolution of a metaphor that was well understood, which was publishing. It was publishing that was democratized. Anybody could blog and anybody could publish. So that was really where the future seemed to lie. Facebook changed all that, and Twitter changed all that, because what it did is it moved us from a publishing metaphor to a peer-to-peer networking metaphor. And I like to think of it as what we didn't predict is that we would go back to the simplest form of human communication, which is the campfire, right? Humans have been gathering around campfires for about 1 million years. And what we've essentially done now is we've created this huge global campfire where we can get together, we can talk about the same kinds of things we would have talked about, the cavemen would have talked about, only we have hashtags to do it with.
It was seen almost as a novelty back then. And how do you see this growing and changing? And I know that your new book takes a look at that and develops that thesis.
Well, the big change is the customer now is in control. I mean, take the auto industry, for example. I have a friend who runs a General Motors dealership, and he says a few years ago, people would come in occasionally with these Consumer Reports surveys that they would pay for. And he said now they come in with information about what other people in their neighborhood have paid for the same car at his dealership in the last 3 months. And when you think about how that changes, think of what's happening in the hospitality industry. When you go to reserve a hotel now, what do? You see all these reviews from other people who've stayed at a hotel. If you have a 2-star rating from 50 people who've stayed there, that completely changes your business. You can't market your way out of a problem like that. You have to change the business. And so what we will see with social media is complete transformative effect on businesses where customers now know so much more going into a decision that they really control the conversation. And businesses are going to have to learn how to respond to that.
Who have attended my seminars to fill out. It's an anonymous survey, and it has just 4 questions. And that it's a public document. It's on Google Documents, and I make it available to anybody, any prospective client who wants to see it. And the other day, somebody posted a negative review of one of my seminars. And I was delighted because it was the first one I had had. And it actually legitimized the positive reviews. So having a little bit of negativity is actually a good thing because it puts the overwhelming positivity in context. Now, Apple, if you do sentiment analysis, and they have been done, of what people are saying about Apple in social media space, about 20% of the comments are negative. Apple is one of the most respected companies on the planet, but about 20% of the people who use Apple computers don't like the company. That's okay. There's sort of a baseline of negativity that in golf they call it a mulligan. You know, you get that mulligan. But what people mainly want is a response. So when Dell started, which is often held up as a poster child of social media excellence, started its social media listening campaign, about 60% of the comments they were seeing online were negative. By simply responding to people, by simply acknowledging that they've been heard, they reduced that to 20% inside of 6 months. So the key is just engage. When people complain, it's almost always about a customer service issue. And almost always what they want is just to get a response.
Basically, one of the things we want to know is for companies that outsource their social media marketing to companies such as us, how do we prove that we're profitable? How do we show conversions, track conversions?
Katie Payne, who's the measurement expert up in Durham, New Hampshire, calls HITS a commonly used web metric. She says it's an acronym for How Idiots Track Success. We measure the wrong stuff. We look at traffic. We look at page views. That stuff is meaningless. Here's ROI. If you know the lifetime value of your customer, and if you know your conversion rate, and if you know where the visits to your website are coming from, all of which are easily trackable,
there are simple formulas to say what's the value of a tweet, what's the value of a search engine visitor, what's the value of a newsletter visitor. If you know where the traffic is coming from, what percentage of it converts to customers, and what the value of a customer is, it's third-grade math.
Facebook fatigue trending now? I've been hearing that there are 6 million less subscribers as of last month. Is that enough to make a trend?
Facebook did lose about 6 million subscribers, according to independent research in the last month that they tracked. I think it was May. To some extent, that is cyclical. That happens every year around this time when college students graduate. A lot of them delete their accounts. But there also is, Facebook is at saturation. I mean, half of the U.S. population is on Facebook. There simply is there's very little room for growth. So I think there is some fatigue developing. If you are promiscuous on Facebook, if you have a lot of friends, a lot of people you don't know, the sheer volume of messages sometimes becomes overwhelming. And it can cause, and some people just decide, I'm going to start over again. This isn't a useful tool for me anymore because I'm not connecting with my friends. I seem to be connecting with this mass of people I don't even know. But I wouldn't say Facebook is in any imminent trouble.
Not so much using social media to do advertising, but more for PR, for industries, let's say like banking, oil, tobacco, things that customers just love to go off in a negative sense. You just not even go there, or is that a way to kind of combat it?
I think banking and oil are somewhat different from tobacco. It's hard to make a positive PR case for tobacco. But some companies, these businesses that are in controversial fields, will often use social media as sort of their corporate social responsibility platform and try to highlight what they're doing, perhaps as an anti-smoking initiative or environmental protection, and that seems to work pretty well. For companies in highly regulated industries such as financial services or telecommunications or areas where there are tight government limits on what you can say, certainly pharmaceuticals and medicine, you have to state up front what you can't say. Because once you, as far as the FCC is concerned, once you answer a question in public, you are committed to answering that same question or questions like that again. You've established a precedent. So I think it's important to have a clear set of guidelines about what you will and won't talk about. And if you're in a politically charged industry, choose to focus on the positive, such as your environmental campaigns, your social awareness campaigns.
Is there ever a point where you censor comments? And this has come up a number of times. Fortunately, about 98% of our comments on Facebook, for instance, are positive. But sometimes comments get very personal about a physician or employee or something like that. And maybe other businesses have had this where employees are attacked on Facebook in some way. And there's been discussion about whether we
comments
should leave that
are
out.
a giant whack-a-mole game. So if you take it down, it's just going to pop up somewhere else. So what Nestle did when they were being criticized over rainforest devastation and deleted comments, negative comments on their Facebook page, created a much bigger publicity problem for themselves by deleting the comments than they ever would have if they had left them up there. The correct thing to do is to respond. You can have a policy, a stated policy, that inappropriate comments, and you can define what is inappropriate, obscenity, for example, or personal attacks, will be deleted. That is the policy of this page. It's okay if you do that. Otherwise, I think responding to inappropriate comments and saying this is not an issue that we will discuss here as a matter of policy, it is not appropriate for this forum, is the best approach. I think deleting is the last
And I'd like
thing
to push it toward business-to-business use of social media. I was with some marketers from Xerox last week who put up a Facebook page for their business-to-business division, put a lot of effort into it. We're happy to report they had 900 friends, and 850 of them turned out to be Xerox employees. Yeah. So I'm wondering, and this may be directed toward Paul, but can you give us some examples of successful business-to-business use of Facebook, for example?
Very few. And
My new book is about business to business specifically, and that's one of the issues we looked at. Facebook, in general, is not a good B2B platform. Outside of recruiting, where we have seen companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers and the big six accounting firms, Boeing, have used Facebook effectively for recruiting. I think Cisco probably does as well as any B2B company I've seen with its Facebook presence. One of the reasons is, to Seth's point, is they've used it as a gaming platform. So they have Facebook games, and they have other interactive games where the scores and the players' activities are actually posted to Facebook. But really, LinkedIn is where it's at for B2B companies right now. It's for business professionals, LinkedIn is to business professionals what Facebook is to leisure time. Speaking to the broader issue of how social media is evolving so rapidly right now, and beyond just the Twitter realm, 2 years ago, simply having a presence on Twitter or Facebook was enough. That was distinctive. Well, now everybody is there. And so we've got a much bigger problem, which is we have to be interesting. And that takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more intellectual capital. It's more investment intensive. And this is really where the action is going to move now, that every company, not every company that needs it is on these social channels, but certainly being there is not distinctive anymore, but creating something that's compelling. You as a musician, or excuse me, as a magician, how can you make make your magic somehow different or compelling in a way that's different from the other magicians who might have blogs or YouTube presences out there? That's the difficult part, and some of the skills that we're going to need in the future are actually the old-fashioned skills that writers and journalists have been practicing for hundreds of years. It's being distinctive.
From Boston Herald. We have a fairly healthy amount of people following us on both Facebook and Twitter, at least our editorial content. So my question was how to sort of parlay that into added value for some of our advertisers, and then how do you position that to the advertisers to show what values
There's a company called Spiceworks that I'd recommend you look at. They are a very interesting business model. It's a software company that doesn't make any money from software. They give the software away, and then they monetize the community, because the people who use this software are corporate IT professionals. They have about 1.3 million users in their community now. It's a very sophisticated tool, high-value tool. What they do for to add value for their sponsors is they create micro-communities. They do custom research. They do targeted advertising. They have webinars that are aimed at specific sub-interest groups within that community. They do sponsored chats. They have white paper downloads. They have podcast downloads. They sell all of this. This company is doing business with every major computer company out there right now. And it is monetizing the community by finding creative ways to tap into the sub-demographics, the special interests of that community. I think the same thing can work for mass media.
Everything I've heard so far that's been talked about are large companies. Where's the room for me? 65, gray hair, don't know much about the computer, I keep trying. But where is the room for me? Who do I go to so that I'm not spending my entire day trying to do this work?
I think your question also came down to your own time and resources and what it's going to cost you, so that you're not doing this stuff full time. And I think you should hire someone. And I think the way I hire someone these days is to crowdsource it. One of the great developments of social networks has been the emergence of services like Elance, and there are about 50 others like that, where you can actually post your needs, and people will compete to service your needs, to provide a service that you want at the lowest price, the highest quality, however you want. So you can actually hire people on a freelance basis to do this kind of thing. Get you on Yelp, get you on City Search, get people filing star ratings about their experience, so that you get that kind of viral visibility.
My question to the audience would be, how many people learned about this seminar from listening to WBZ radio versus social media?
Very good. How many
Great question.
by listening to the radio? Okay, social media. Interesting.
Such a great
Thank you
point.
for that, sir.
Fish where the fish are.
Thank you so much.
Exactly. And talk radio
Yeah.
is what has rescued AM radio. Talk radio and news radio. Radio has remarkable perseverance. Whereas television has sort of degenerated into this reality show glop now. Radio still has a unique role to play in the share of mind, the time that we give to it, and that's not going to change. Mainstream,
I always find it
mainstream
interesting.
media is not going away. Newspapers are going away.
Yeah, I always find it
newspapers are
interesting.
going away. Mainstream media, a lot of it is going to be very
Hi,
healthy for a long time to come.
Thank you.
Paul, you said before that LinkedIn is the B2B way to go, and I was just wondering if each of your B2B businesses, if you could briefly comment on how you're using
So I use LinkedIn for connections. I participate in about a dozen different groups. I use it to answer questions. I use it to pose questions. I use it to promote work that clients are doing, because it's the best way to reach a professional audience. The one thing that you don't want to do with LinkedIn is just advertise. And you'll see that people will there are these abandoned groups in LinkedIn where you see people saying, this group has been taken over by the marketers, I'm out of here. You use it to participate in conversations, and as you participate in conversations, your visibility in the community grows and business opportunities arise out of that. The other thing I'll use it for is I do a lot of writing. So when I'm looking for sources, if I'm looking for a good story, I'll post it as a question on LinkedIn, and I'll have a dozen responses to that question in a matter of a couple of hours. But I'm just one person. I think for larger companies, there are many more diverse applications of LinkedIn.
Obviously, social media has had a huge impact on the traditional advertising channels. And so my question is, how does a company determine the right balance? Should social media be used largely in lieu of some of the traditional channels, or should it be largely incremental? And so bottom line is, how do you minimize the redundancies between the two?
Paul?
There's this term called going viral that you've probably heard, where something captures the public's imagination and suddenly millions and millions of people know about it. In almost every instance, there is when something goes viral, it's because it hits the mainstream media. And so when it hits the New York Times, that's when it takes off and all the other social channels begin to communicate it. Mainstream media should very much be a core part of your marketing program. It should be for a long time to come. I think it will be a declining part. I mean, we saw General Motors declare 2 years ago, I think, that they were going to move a third of their mainstream advertising budget to social channels. A lot of the automakers are doing it that same sort of ratio. But I think you need to look at mainstream media as being a catalyst for conversations. There are two different kinds of values. The mainstream media is a broadcast; it's a one-to-many metaphor. Social media is a many-to-many metaphor. So you use the one-to-many to advertise the many-to-many, and they seem to work best in that partnership.